have 3 confirmed cases. Information or questions have come to my attention about the quarantining process. So I purposely put that information in the letter to staff, anticipating it might help answer some of the questions that people have relative to the process. So individuals have an interest in understanding how this whole process works when students or staff are identified. So I'll just take a second to, talk it through and answer any questions about it later if there are any. So at least for the first 3 cases that we've had, we've all received notice the same way from a parent. So it could happen that, because eventually every confirmed case, every positive confirmed case of COVID-19 gets reported and maintained in a COVID-19 registry by the Suffolk County Department of Health. So the way the process is supposed to work is when someone goes to a testing site and when they test positive, that information is supposed to be automatically reported by the testing site to the Suffolk County Department of Health. So it's possible that someone could get tested, have the test results reported to the Suffolk County Department of Health. The health department will notice that they haven't received any report from the school if it's a student, and they'll reach out to the school and say, we're advising you that one of your staff or students have tested positive. That has not happened, but it could happen. It's my sense that in our 3 situations, the parents were very timely in immediately contacting the school. In this case, it was 3 Wilson Tech students, so they contacted their high school principal, who contacted us. But the timing was very quick, is my point. And once we receive notification, what we'll do is we need to confirm if it's positive. That's the important thing, because there are so many individuals who believe that they are symptomatic of COVID-19, and they turn out not to be positive for it. So the county health department and ourselves, we look for positive test results. So in the case of the students, we asked if the parents could share the testing results, so that we'd have confirmation that there was a positive test. And we did that because the current process by the county health department is that they need at least a day, if not longer, to quote unquote investigate the report. So after they receive information from the school, and I've been directly involved in that process, so I would understand how the process works. They need to, in fact, reach out to the testing site. They need to make sure that the results are positive. And then they go through the contact tracing process in order to determine if a quarantine is warranted. And I indicated in this letter to the staff that in the conversations I've participated in, they've been very thorough in terms of the Department of Health asking many questions about to what extent did other individuals have exposure to the person with the confirmed case of COVID-19. And they talk about, do people wear a mask? Do they not? Social distancing, size of the room, number of people in the room, ventilation system, how are desks laid out. I was pretty impressed with the thoroughness of the questioning in order to make a determination if someone needs to be quarantined. So, for example, well, forget about that example. So once the Department of Health makes a determination that the case warrants to be presented to their committee, then it gets presented to the committee. Now, over the course of the month of September, the process has evolved from a telephone call that literally takes hours, and there are typical multiple conversations between the school administration and the health department. That process has now been replaced by a portal, and so that the school now goes into a portal, and the information to be entered in there is very extensive. It takes hours, literally hours, to put all the information in there, and the information is information that they require to make a determination if someone tests positive. So in the first, I guess it was the first issue, when we got notice, it was the first case we got notice. They meet at 4:30 at the end of the day, and it's a committee of medical staff that reviews all the cases that have come before them. Personally, I think it's a good system, because instead of having individual, public health nurses making decisions, the committee makes decisions together. So you have a lot of consistency there in process. So you don't have one nurse making a decision or using this criteria and someone using different criteria. I think in order to afford a consistency over the decision-making process, I like that idea. I don't like the fact that it meets at 4:30 every day. And we were actually that first day, I got a call in the office at 6:45 that night, because the committee took they took 2.5 hours to review all the cases. And at that point I said, well, we have 23 names of people for you to start calling, because I have a positive test result and you've confirmed the results. So we don't want those people in school. And Department of Health says it takes 2 to 3 days to notify people. And I said, that's not acceptable, that we want to notify people immediately. So myself and administrators stayed late, and we called all the parents of the students, and we called the staff members, and we said, you're quarantined. Now, we didn't make that decision, and I clarified that with the Department of Health. In order to make timely notification, would you mind if we called the parents of the students and the staff and just inform them of your quarantine order? And they said, absolutely, anything we can do to facilitate notification in a timely way. So that's what we did moving forward. And everyone's learning through the process. We put out our own templates about how to collect information because there were no templates issued by the state or the county in terms of how to manage the information. So as a matter of fact, the last couple of days, we've been working on updating the forms with our second iteration of forms to collect the information so that when we have a confirmed case, the concept is that you have the names of the people who had close contact, proximate contact with the person with the confirmed case of COVID-19, and you have immediate access to the contact information, their home number, their cell number. I know one of the concerns that was expressed to me through the unions is that the staff does not want to have their telephone contact information on a form, and I can appreciate that. So we took that off of the new iteration of forms that I think they're going to be implemented tomorrow throughout the agency, and it just we're trying to make the process as efficient as possible, so that when you get notified, there's always this rush, and the rush is you want to make sure that if there are people who've been exposed to someone, you want to make sure they're not at work, and you want to make sure you're able to contact people. And, just sit down and think about the process, how one staff member or one student could have contacts throughout a high school. And in many cases, when this occurs in high schools, they have to close the high school because just the process of trying to determine what type of contact a student had in the multiple classes in the high school, it's just overwhelming. It could be hundreds of students. So you've seen that in the paper. So we'd like to be very specific, and we've put a lot of work and effort into designing a system that in fact will enable us to report it promptly. I always make a point to, as part of this process, to call out to the leadership of the unions. We have 12 bargaining units in BOCES, and I always put through a call to every one of the presidents and just give them a heads up what's going on before, during the process, because you never can keep ahead of this information, it seems, and I want to make sure at least the leadership of the unions are in fact aware of that. So the Department of Health has been very cooperative. We're working with them in terms of trying to improve the system, and they've been working very, very hard in a collaborative manner to improve the system. I know they've moved their end of the day meeting up from 4:30 to 2. And I know that we've discussed, greater flexibility in terms of trying to expedite the investigation. But the truth is, you don't want that investigation expedited where it's not being done properly and thoroughly. They have a responsibility to give diligence to their investigation to make sure that it's accurate, it's done properly, and they need that. The competing interest, though, is if I'm in possession of a confirmed case of a student or a staff member, and the Department of Health is taking a day or a day and a half to make a decision about quarantining, it's not a good place to be, because I know that there's someone in a class who tested positive, and I'd like to not have those students or staff come to school the next day. But the Department of Health has not finished its investigation because it requires time. So we're trying to work through those issues so that when we have confirmed information, that we can react to it quickly and minimize any exposure by students or staff to someone who has tested positive. So we're working through the process. At least it's working for us. I can tell you it's time consuming. If you get a report at 8:30 in the day, you're finished maybe at 5 o'clock that day and you're doing nothing else. I'll speak for myself. That's been my experience. So it's very consuming. And it's very consuming because people want to get this right and make sure they do get it right, and to make sure we've identified all the people that need to be identified. The other question that comes up has to do with the quarantine period. We do not make the decision to quarantine. The Department of Health does that. I can tell you that the process that I've seen so far is the date that you have symptoms is an important date in the process, because the Department of Health reaches back 2 days prior to symptoms under the belief that you were potentially contagious, where you could have infected people 2 days prior to the symptoms. I'm not going to say, I'll say in our cases, that's always been the metrics used, and they can make an exceptions as they deem necessary. But there are individuals who are asymptomatic. You could, particularly if you're a child or a student, you may not recognize what you think are reactions to allergies, for example, or a cold. you may not recognize that that in fact is COVID-19 until a week later, literally a week later. Or symptoms may appear much later. So what they'll typically do in a classical case is when someone recognizes the symptoms, and some of the symptoms are really telltale and really very obvious, like the loss of smell and taste. When that happens to people, they tend to know it like immediately, and they tend to react to it immediately. But there are other types of things, like I said before, congestion, someone just thought that it was allergies and they happen to have allergies, and have no other symptoms other than that. And then they think that maybe they should go for testing or not, and they go for testing and find out it was positive. So they'll go back to those 2 days. They'll look at the first of those 2 days. Now, if you test on, if you're symptomatic on a Monday and you go back 2 days, well, that's Sunday and Saturday, you didn't have any exposure to anyone in school. So there would be no need to do contact tracing for that to the degree of notifying people who might have had exposure, because the last exposure would have been Friday, which was the last school day, and that would have been 3 days prior to the onset of symptoms, if it happened like Monday morning, for example. Versus if you're symptomatic on a Friday morning, they'll go back to Thursday and Wednesday, and what they'll do is they'll look at the documentation for contact tracing. Where is that person assigned? Where is that student or staff member assigned? And they'll look for the log, the attendance log of people that came into that class. For Wilson Tech, it's relatively not complicated, because at least in the situations we have, you don't have kids going out to 3 or 4 different kind of related services. You don't have them moving throughout the school. Certainly in special ed, you have exactly that happening, and it gets more complicated. And take a second to think through the process. So if there is a student who tested positive in a class, if that student goes out for speech and there's another student in that class, well, you now have the exposure to another student and to the speech therapist. If that student goes for special subjects, and we know they go for special subjects every day, then the teacher who taught that class will have a risk of exposure. So all this information has to be gathered and maintained and readily available. And that's why for the last 2 days, we've been working to update the forms to make them as efficient and accurate as we can, because the objective is when we get notified, we want to be able to hop into motion. We don't want to have a situation where we're not able to quarantine individuals or pass the information along in a timely way to the Department of Health because the system doesn't work. So we've put a lot of time and effort into that process. And then, so let me give you a good example, because people have said, gee, I always read it was 14 days quarantine. So why isn't it 14 days for every person? It's not, because when you look back at the metrics, if you went a week and you're a student and you didn't realize that last week the symptoms that you were feeling were actually related to COVID-19, you don't go for testing for a week later. And then your test results come back and they come back positive. When you look at the reach back of symptoms, the doctor is going to say, well, why didn't you have those symptoms? Well, I didn't realize it, but last week, last Saturday I was home and, I had a sore throat. I was coughing a little bit and, I thought I had a headache, but, it was really nothing to it. I didn't think it was really anything. But when you do, and now advance that conversation a week later where they're having testing done, the reach back, and let's say the testing was done on a Saturday, what they'll do is they'll say, well, when was the first day of your symptoms? And you're going to say, that was 8 days ago, last Saturday. And then they're going to reach back the 2 days prior to that, which would be Friday and Thursday of the week before that point. And then they're going to, that's the day they're typically used to count the 14 days going forward. So here you are getting tested on a Saturday, and they're reaching back to the previous Saturday as the date of symptoms a week before. And then they're going to reach back 2 days prior to those first onset of symptoms, which was Friday and Thursday. They'll start counting the 14 days from Thursday going forward. So you might only be quarantined for 7 days because of the reach back, because you've been exposed literally 8-9 days prior to that, versus if you become symptomatic on a Friday and you go to the doctor on Saturday, you get tested, you get the test results, they're going to do a reach back to Friday and Thursday, the 2 days, and then they're going to start the 14-day count from going from that point forward. So that person is going to be quarantined for a much longer period of time. So when you look at this, people say, isn't 14 days 14 days? No, it's not. It varies because of the metrics that the Department of Health uses to determine a quarantine. A similar situation for individuals who have been tested for positive for COVID-19. Those people are not quarantined. They use a different term. They call it isolated, because they actually want you in your home to the degree practical to isolate at home, meaning not to minimize the contact with other family members at home. If there's 2 bathrooms in the house, the person with the confirmed case uses one bathroom, everyone else uses the other. You don't eat together. And they're in isolation, and they're followed up by the Department of Health. And then the Department of Health has to release them from isolation. They typically do that 10 days from the point of being isolated. People, I've discussed this before, they'll say, gee, why is it 14 days for someone who's been exposed and only 10 days for someone who's confirmed? Because they believe that you've been symptomatic for 4 days prior to showing the symptoms. You just haven't shown the symptoms. So when they say 10 days for someone who's tested positive, they add 4 days on preceding the onset of symptoms. And you're not released from isolation until you are fever-free up to 72 hours, and you cannot be taking any fever-reducing medicine. So if it's the 10th day and you have 101 temperature, you're not getting released from isolation. When you don't have a temperature, they count 3 days forward, and you have to, if there are other symptoms that you had, they have to be all being resolved. So it's not exactly 10, and it could be 10, could be 12, could be 18. They don't release you until they feel that that you're no longer a risk to other people, to infect other people. And they will issue you a letter. The Department of Health will issue a release letter, and you will need to produce that before you can re-enter school or re-enter your place of business where you work, and so on and so forth. So that's the information on that process. The other thing that we've been doing so far, I'm going to look to change it. When we identify someone with a positive case, what we do is a robocall to the staff and the parents, to the staff who work in that building, and we do a robocall to the parents of students who are enrolled in that building, and we do that the night before that the people are being quarantined. So everyone, at least we've been able to do that to date, so people walking into the building will know the event before they walk into the building. And I've gotten some feedback. It's always positive, and it's accepted that way, that, you know, there are people who there's not a risk of exposure, but there are people who could be coming in and out of the building from another building, and they just want to know that the building that we're in had a case of COVID-19. I'm in agreement with that. That's why we let people know. There's not a risk of exposure, because if you went to that building and if you went into a classroom, you had to put your name on that attendance log, and your name would appear in that attendance log, and your name would be considered among the other people that reported to the Department of Health. This was just, people who are like a delivery person, a messenger for BOCES or something like that, just having an FYI on knowing that when I drop mail off, and making that up, that there was a case. So what we're looking to do is to see if we can do a robocall to the staff advising there's been a confirmed case, and then put something on the website and doing it to all BOCES staff. This way, everyone in the district has notification of it. Again, the more we communicate, the more transparent, the better for everyone. And that's what we're trying to do. I think, the notion of, and putting something in writing, typically, I think it's a better way of communicating information, quite frankly, in a robocall. There's a certain amount of time you have in a robocall that you can relate information. So that's going to be our process going forward. So, that's what I wanted to share with the group. Jen, are there any questions relative to what we discussed that I can help clarify?
Yes, if staff are returning from isolation, do they need to take another test, or is there any documentation? Is there another letter?
There's a letter. So staff returning from isolation will get a letter from the Department of Health, and students, staff and students, and that letter has to come to us the day before they come back. Otherwise, they're not permitted to re-enter the school.
Understood. Do you know when they can expect to get that letter? Did the Department of Health?
When they're cleared. So as I mentioned before, that period is a minimum of 10 days, but it could be any number. It could be 20 days. As I said before, if you still have a fever or if you're still symptomatic, they're not going to release you until you've met their criteria. So when you've met their criteria, they'll give you a letter, and we're gonna request. We've notified people. We want that letter before you walk into the building.
A question that came up in the chat box is related to, we're in allergy season right now. What happens when we answer on that app that we have a fever and we stay home, but it's not COVID, it's allergy related or some other illness?
You're using your own sick time.
So
if you're quarantined, there's a state executive order and there's a federal law that requires the employer to pay for people who are quarantined your full pay without any kind of loss of accruals to your sick time. But if you're just exercising good caution, that's coming out of your own sick bank.
All right, I'm just looking in the chat. Executive board, do we have any other questions that you're seeing in the chat that I don't want to miss anybody? Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Flynn.
Oh,
Yes, Ernie.
Oh. Yeah, the question I'd asked you when I spoke to you the last time regarding not having teachers not take their mask on or eat in class or drink water in front of students. I don't know if you can clarify that.
Yeah, thank you, Ernie. So I am familiar with the question. It came up from another unit yesterday. And, you know, one of a question that was posed to me recently is, you know, why can't we, I'll answer your question, Ernie, but it's related. It was the same conversation I had yesterday on another Zoom call with another unit. You know, why can't we get together and like we normally do and have like a little bagel thing, you know, 10 or 15 minutes before the start of school? And because we're in a pandemic, and I say this respectfully, because we're in a pandemic, we don't want people gathering in a classroom. When we're all through this, we all pray for the day when we can do that. And related to the, you know, the way the question was presented to me yesterday is, you know, we were told that we can't drink and so on and so forth. We don't want you bringing liquids into the classroom. Certainly, we don't want you eating there for sure. But if someone has to take a drink or go for a mass break, they should do that. I've spoken to the principals. There's a mechanism in every school for do that. We don't want to deny someone if you have to take a drink or take your mask off. We 100% recognize that's important. People have different tolerance levels for wearing a mask, particularly wearing it all day long. We want to make sure that it's comfortable for people. And I fully endorse that. I've said it to this group. I've said it to the principals. I've said it to the administrative council, and I'll say it again. It's very disruptive and inconvenient to take mass breaks, to do all this stuff, but that's what I want you to do. The first priority is keeping everyone safe and healthy. That's the first priority. So that, but we don't want people, you know, what happens is, you know, if you say, you know, can I just take a sip of water? Well, you're in front of kids. We don't want you taking your mask off in front of kids because we're driving a message there. Some people will interpret that to mean, well, I want to open up a can of soda, or I want to have a cup of coffee and kind of drink that over the next 15. We don't want that. This is a school. It's a classroom. If someone needs to nourish themselves, totally understandable, you know, then go for a break, go to the bathroom, walk out, you know, nourish yourself. But we're trying to minimize items in a room, trying to minimize the clutter in a room. But again, it's a balancing act, which is, you know, how can we best minimize keeping anyone from getting sick? That's what weighs on me. Every day and every night, I don't want anyone to get sick. And if you bear that weight for 5 seconds, you'll appreciate what I'm saying. So everything and anything we can do to keep ourselves healthy, that's what we're doing. You know, the notion of everything that we're doing here, it's to keep everyone safe. It's not that we object to people taking a mask off. We want to send the messaging to the kids and to other staff, go out and take a mask break, do it. You know, yeah, it interrupts the flow of the instruction. It's disruptive. It's all those things. But we're in a pandemic. You have to do that. I've said, to me, I think the best mask break is going outside for a walk in the fresh air. You know, social distance, take your mask. I know it's not practical in all situations to do that. I respect that. I'm just so happy that, you know, relatively speaking, we're doing well, particularly with our special ed kids, where many of those kids can't tolerate wearing a mask. So anyway, so it's not that you can't take a drink of water. It's that if you have to take a drink of water, just ask to be excused and go out and take your drink of water or whatever you have to do to nourish yourself. Other people have, you know, other situations. Some of them are medical based. I know that for many years as a principal. Some people have to control, you know, blood sugar levels, and, you know, they want to do things privately. And, you know, we always support that. We're always completely flexible for that. Ernie, does that answer your question?
I'm going to just jump in here because I have the chat and I've gotten some private comments. It does clarify the question, but speaking of health, staff have had access to water previously. There are some people, maybe instructional staff, that are teaching for hours long blocks through the mask. You know, is there a way to balance that need with the need for, of course, being safe?
Well, there's always a compromise for everything. But as I said before, uh, I've been a principal in almost in every, actually, I think every special ed school. So, you know, so I see when I used to go into classrooms, there's a cup of coffee there, there's a can of soda there open, and people are drinking it. We don't want that. We don't want that in this environment. Certainly, you know, if someone is going on for 2 hours straight, my first question is, what are you going on for 2 hours straight for? Take a break. Take a break, you know, and you know, what is so important that you can't take 5 minutes to walk out and take a break somewhere? And I'm telling you, I want you to do that. You know, I want you to do that. I want you to be safe to do that. And this is not, Jen, a punitive measure. It's a measure to keep us safe. That's what the whole idea is here. You know, if people are wearing a mask for 2 hours, I'd say, why are they wearing a mask for 2 hours? You know, why can't you break it up after 45 minutes or an hour and go for a walk, you know, and have these conversations with your principals about that. I'm completely supportive of that. That's what I want done. And it's not easy to wear a mask for a continued period of times.
The questions coming in about how to take a break if you have a schedule when you're teaching 4 courses in a row, how would they be able to take that 5-minute break? And where would they take the break to? If not,
you should be speaking with your principal in your building. You have, I assume, a labor management in your building. So if I have a 40-minute class, I'm going to end it 8 minutes early. It's not a 40-minute class. It's a 32-minute class. And where do I take my break? You have to figure that out. You know, as I said before, you know, do you want to put kids in the hallway all the time? Do you want to go outside? When you go outside, then you have kids might elope depending on the program, the issue. There are always consequences to these things I'm suggesting. But, you know, you could go out in the hall, you know, walk around the hallway. You know, my preference would be that you would go somewhere, if you're taking a mask break, that wouldn't be within eye shot of other students, because people are going to see people without masks, and the first thing they're going to say, why aren't you wearing your mask? And these are the type of issues that I don't want to get. I can set the policy and the practice, and I've made it very clear. You shouldn't be teaching 4 classes in a row with your mask on. I'm making it clear. And you should be working through with your administration ways where you can take breaks that are practical. It's not easy to wear a mask all day, and I don't want you doing it. I don't know how to say it any more than that. I'll make a point to go on with the principals and reaffirm that. And I know it's not just a matter of reducing classroom instructional time. It's also a matter of, you know, the practicality of how you take these mask breaks so you don't have, you know, 50 kids in the hallway at the same time. You know, I get that. So, you know, you get together and you figure it out. Some people take their mask breaks in the beginning of the class. Some take it at the end of the class. Some take it in the middle of the class. You know, I'm relying upon people to be able to make those good decisions. And I have complete trust and confidence that you'll come up with reasonable compromises that enables people to do that. I want you to be able to do it. I can't say it any clearer. And I'm certain that you can have these conversations. Look, this thing's being recorded. But I've said this repeatedly. I want people to be able to take mask breaks because they're necessary. They're needed. And I want that to happen. And does that, you know, disrupt and infringe upon instruction? It does. It absolutely does. But that's a consequence of the pandemic. No one's to blame for that. But we got to keep people healthy. And it's not easy to tolerate wearing a mask for 4 periods in a row. I wouldn't endorse that.
Just one question that came up. So we can take our mask off in the hallway?
No, I prefer you not take it off in the hallway.
Okay.
I mean, Jen, you know,
Yep.
people have to be able to figure this stuff out for themselves. So when kids see other people in the hallway, whether it's another student or another staff member without a mask, it's an immediate problem for everyone. So we want to send the message, particularly to the students, that we want you to wear your mask all day long, as tough as it is. And we all recognize that if you take mask off, the first thing kids are going to do is react to it. If you take it off, I can take it off. So in a hallway, as you're walking down a hallway, there's always going to be the potential that kids are going to come out of a room, staff are going to come out of a room, they're going to see you without that. And, you know, the thinking would be, why can't you sit around at a staff meeting or a representative group and say, how do we best do this? You know, how do we enable ourselves to have bathroom breaks, water breaks, mask breaks, and how do we build that into the schema of the school schedule and do that where we're minimizing disruption, but fulfilling those needs, which are viable. I want to be able to take a, look, here's my water. I keep the water here by my desk. I want people to be able to drink water. It's nourishment. It's a reasonable request that you're making. And I don't want to come across like we don't want water. All I'm simply saying is these are issues that the building should be able to work through without having Mike Flynn sit down and say, can't you work out a resolution to this? I've already gone on record repeatedly. I want people to be able to take their breaks because they need to take their breaks and have, you know, people come up with intelligent solutions to problems that how do we make this thing work where we're not sending the wrong messaging to children, to students, to other staff, so on and so forth.
Sorry, Jen,
Yes,
we have,
I'm just, yep, reading the comments as they're rolling in here.
sorry.
A quick reader. So just some of the comments are, you know, we've had the ability to have water bottles at our desk prior. Students are taking mask breaks. Wouldn't it be good modeling to show them how to appropriately take mask breaks? So those are some of the comments coming in. That we've always been able to take a drink as needed. I'm not saying coffee or soda, this was specifically water that came up. And wouldn't it be appropriate to model for students mask breaks and how to, you know, sanitize, put your mask back on?
Well, of course it would be appropriate to model that. It makes sense. I don't, you know, and again, I think that you should be able to figure that out. You know, how does that work the best? You know, collaborate with your principal about how to do that the best way possible. As you know, as far as water breaks, I appreciate the distinction between water and coffee and soda and so on and so forth. And I wrote a note. I'll have a conversation with the principals again. We've not imposed this type of restriction because we haven't had a pandemic before. It's not meant to be punitive. It's meant, you know, if you have water bottles throughout the room, some of the classes may have 2, 3, 4, 5 people, and you know, is there a possibility that someone grabs the wrong water bottle? I don't know, but I certainly will look and have a conversation with the principals about it. But understand something, to all the people listening here, this is not punitive. We're trying to keep everyone safe. It's as simple as that. It's not meant to deny you access to water. That's not the purpose here. We're just trying to maximize the protection for staff and minimize the spreading of infection. That's what this is about, 100%. And if we can achieve both goals, you know, I certainly will look to have the conversation along those lines.
A separate comment that came in talked about checking staff in the morning when they enter. All that is BOCES policy, right? That each building is, you know, checking either through the app or with the form people who enter the building. Is a question. Is that a BOCES wide policy, or is that building by building that staff are checked as they enter, whether for the app or the form?
It's not a policy. It's a directive from the State Department of Health and the State Education Department that when it pertains to staff, they're supposed to take their temperature at home, and they're supposed to report that on the app. And we do have a mechanism to determine who has not reported that information on the app every day. We're trying to be flexible, so to speak, and not heavy-handed, because there could be days when, you know, you forgot to press the buttons on the app and you show up at school. And so your name goes out in an email to the principal as not reporting it. So it's a requirement, and we've put into place, everyone, you know, loaded the app the first couple of days of school, but there are people, and we anticipated this, there are some people who don't have a smartphone where the phone would support that app. And there could be, you know, situations where you lost your phone, or you forget where you put your phone last night. You get up in the morning and you're searching for it. Look, this is, you know, it's life, and we're trying to have the right balance between letting people know that we didn't, you know, get that app response, because what staff is supposed to do is, if for whatever reason you didn't complete that app, it's because your phone won't support it. It's because you didn't have your phone broke, you forgot, which happens, that when you come in, you come through security and you fill out the form. And what the principal does is they take a look at the list of people who didn't report on the app, and they take a look at the list of people who filled out the form, and they should match one another. So if you forgot to do it, or if your phone was broken, or any of those reasons, or your phone doesn't support it, then you can come through security. We're trying to minimize the number of people who do that, because we're not trying to keep people from getting into the building and getting to work. So it's not our policy. It's something we've been directed to do. And in a similar way, the parents have not been directed to do the questionnaire. They've been directed to take their child's temperature at home. And as you well know, I've said this before, we want to make sure with 100% certainty that we don't have children walking into the building with a fever. So we manage that process ourselves, and we've invested in equipment and in nurses to help with that process every day.
Sorry, thank you. So some buildings, you know what? I'm going to clarify this one in the chat, because I don't think, I think I can clarify this one in the chat. Ernie, do you have anything to add?
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry about that. No, I am primarily the reason why I asked Mr. Flynn to join us was so he can answer questions to them. And I'm pretty much clear, but I'd like for him to share it as members have requested directly with them. So if the members have questions, please ask questions, and, you know, Flynn is here now. Together, our new motto. Mr. Flynn, is there anything
Yes,
else
Ernie.
you would like to add? Sure. Would you, is there?
One other piece of information, as we've shared before, we're leasing part of the Abraham Lincoln Elementary School in Deer Park. We did that because we had a surge of referrals in May and June for the program, and that school has it has the highest number of staff, and we wanted to thin the number of students in that building. So we went out and leased, I think we're leasing 12 classes. Some of those rooms are for related service. We were hoping to move in there in the beginning of the year. And it's just, the process of getting all the approvals from the county department, from the state education department, working through that process. And I think we're just about done. I know Nancy Wilson and Kim Cooper and a lot of staff have been working very hard, and we appreciate everyone's flexibility to make this work. I've said this before, I don't want to, everyone's time is valuable to repeat things, but when I made a decision this summer not to open up for summer school, I got a lot of calls from parents who weren't necessarily happy with that decision because they felt their child was regressing. And I said to them then that I wasn't comfortable because we weren't prepared at that point in terms of the protective equipment, and I wasn't going to do it. But I would work as hard as I could to reopen 5 days a week to deal with the special ed kids, and they needed it because of the regression. I could have looked at a hybrid program, and I didn't want to do it because I wanted to get these kids back in school 5 days because of their educational needs, which are very unique and special. And as I've said before, virtually most districts, if not all districts, when it comes to their special education students, even though the high schools are on hybrid schedules, the middle schools, some of the elementary, they're all bringing their special ed kids back full time because there's a recognition of the need to do so. So I know it's never easy to move, and certainly not easy to move into the elementary school and then move out a month later. And I want to thank staff for being cooperative and flexible and making that work. As I've said before, I want to come out of this pandemic the way we went in, as an agency that's viable. And I worry about that more than you know, because it's not business as usual. We're not getting the referrals as we normally get in terms of new students. What happens each quarter when we open up that window for parents of remote students, I don't know. I can speculate that we know that the building with the highest number or highest percent of students who are being educated remotely are from the James Allen Junior Senior High School. And again, speculation on my part, that's where you have older students with medical issues, significant medical issues. So kind of makes sense that that's where you probably look to keep your child home from school. And we can all speculate, what do you think parents are going to be looking at when, November 1st rolls around with the beginning of the second quarter in terms of returning their child to school? And, again, all speculation, but if I was a parent, I'd probably be looking to see how many cases of COVID-19 they had in my child's school. If there was a lot, that would probably deter me at a concern. If there were few, it might make me feel more comfortable. I don't know, I'm speculating, but you know, we're focusing where we need to focus now. Health and safety, keep everyone protected, do the best that we can do to keep people protected, and let's get through the pandemic. And in my opinion, it's not going away in January. You know, that's when the vaccines, they have 6 different vaccines that are being tested. I read about this stuff all the time to be up to date. And, you know, for that vaccine to be effective, it's got to be within the population. It's got to be out there. And that's not going to happen in 2 or 3 months. So, you know, we're going to be, in my opinion, playing through this health and safety protocol for the rest of the year. And we should be until we know it's safe not to have to take these extraordinary precautions. And we'll have to see what happens next year. But I've said this before, I'm proud of the work that this agency does for children. And you've heard me talk about this repeatedly in terms of we have the highest enrollment as a percent of the K-12 population that we receive students from. And I think it's a direct result of the confidence and the trust and the satisfaction that districts and parents have in our program. And we need to restore that when we get out of the pandemic. We need to restore it and keep ourselves on that track. And I worry about that. It's not business where we're, you know, I don't even know if we do in-person screenings. And, you know, how do you screen a kid for a program, particularly in special ed, without bringing them in and doing an in-person assessment? It's a different environment we're working under. I appreciate people's being flexible. I know people are concerned and for good reason. And we're doing the best we can do to keep everyone as safe as possible. I went out and bought the N95 mask. You know, I set up a conference call with the chief of pediatrics for Cohen Children's Hospital back in the summer for the nurses and for the administrators. And we had one of these, you know, fire away, you know, with the questions. It was Dr. Sophie Jan. She's the head of chief of pediatrics for Cohen Children's Hospital. And, you know, people got to ask the questions, and people were asking about N95 versus face shields. And she said N95s, they're meant to be airtight, and they're just not comfortable for most people to tolerate for an extended period. And I bought them because I know for some people, they need that level of assurance. I got thousands of them, thousands. But she also said a face shield with a surgical mask is more than sufficient too. We've done, and I bought all these supplies back in, well, 90% of them back in June. So we'd have them in the building. And we don't have we have a huge supply, of these, so we don't run out. So we're doing everything we possibly can to keep people safe. I'm just so happy that in special ed, where we have a lot of close contact, it's the nature of working in those environments that we haven't had any outbreaks and people are compliant. That's what I worry about, everyone's health. And then I worry about where we're going to be in another year. So I appreciate the opportunity to be invited on. I'm always, it's my job to answer your questions. I've extended this to all the other unions. And I look forward to continuing the conversation. I appreciate the courage. It takes a lot of courage to step forward. You know, I thought about those food service workers, you know, when we all went away in March and those food service workers showed up every day to feed the families on free lunch. You know, God bless those people, you know, and that's who we are. So we want to keep you safe, and we'll work through this process together. You know, we want to come out the other way with everyone healthy and everyone employed. That's the goal. So Jen, Ernie, do you have any other questions that have come up on your chat room before I go?
Yes, thank you so much for your time. One of the questions piggybacks on talking about the equipment and the PPE. We spoke in the past about those clear masks for teachers of the deaf or speech pathologists. Do we have those available yet for staff?
You know, I'll make a note. I know for a fact that we ordered them, and I know for a fact we received them because I asked to take a look at them, and they're like it's like a little plastic, you know, thing, a window, so you can see through. I had heard that there was some issue with fogging on some of the masks. It's like what, you know, if you ever wear sunglasses when you're driving and you have a mask on, sometimes I'll come out of the store and I'll forget to take my mask off and I have my glasses on and your glasses fog up, the same thing. But I know for a fact we ordered them. We ordered a lot of them. I'm gonna tell you, we ordered over 5,000 of them, of $5,000. You know, that was my memory of that. And I know we got them over the summer, like midsummer. So they should be there. I'll make a note to follow up with Nancy Wilson to see what the status is, the speech mask. You know, and again, it's not necessarily, Jen, one size fits all. You know, for some people, it might be a surgical mask and a face shield is more comfortable than that. And for other people, it might be a surgical mask and one of these plastic barriers that we went out and bought. We're still trying to, you know, these barriers weren't available in the beginning of the summer. It was like the temperature devices. It was like a cottage industry that grew overnight. We're still searching for barriers that work, particularly when you have to have close contact with students. You know, we just can't find a barrier that fits on a student desk or on the side of a desk. And I can tell you, because I look almost every day, because I get 200 emails a day and half of them are for vendors trying to sell this stuff. So I know we're up to $2.9 million that we spent for supplies. I know that I went out and ordered a ton of Chromebooks at the end of the year and over the summer. The problem is everyone in the world wants Chromebooks. And they're now back ordered at least 3 months. You know, the Chromebooks come from China. You know, there's tariffs that have been imposed, but that's not really it. It's really that so many districts across the world are teaching remotely. But I ordered them. And I also, we have, if you've probably seen it in the buildings, we started the work about 2 weeks ago where we want to make sure that in our buildings, every staff member, every instructional staff member has a Chromebook. So you can have your meetings. I don't want you meeting together. I want you meeting electronically. And the desktops, as you well know, don't have the camera or the microphone. So, you know, and I know, you know, the speech department, the PT, these people, they meet all the time themselves. We want that to be happening electronically. So, you know, they are ordered, you know, when they come in, probably not soon, but there'll be one for every instructional staff member. I can tell you that because I ordered one and then extra on top of that too. So that's the new world we're going to be living in, that we, you know, we have conversations like this. And like I said, I personally don't think we're going to come out of this in January. That's going to be the beginning of coming out of it. But realistically, it could take another year or longer where we're safe. So, you know, those Chromebooks will be put to good use. And I went to the board a while back. You know, several of our students didn't have connectivity in their home. And our board passed a resolution that if there's a family that can't afford it, BOCES is going to pay for it. We typically work through agencies that do that, but and that process does work, but it takes a month or two. In the meantime, the child doesn't have access to do it. So the board supported the recommendation. We want to have equity. You don't have equity when you have poor kids not being able to be taught remotely because they don't have internet in their home. And then the other thing is, what's happening in our country with the civil unrest that's occurred. We need to address that. There's never a good time to do it, but we need to address that. There's been a diversity, equity, inclusive committee that's been in operation for 2 years now. I'm looking at one of the co-chairs, Jen Sommer, very proud of her as co-chairing that. And we need to step up that process. Angelique Johnson-Dingle is our district superintendent, and she's been a real strong voice and leader on a statewide basis. I know that I've mentioned repeatedly that over the summer I met every week with the superintendents, and Angelique deserves all the credit. Our BOCES put together a training program. It's an 8-session training program that we've asked to have all our superintendents participate in. It's being taught by 5 extraordinarily talented professionals who talk about equity across all the dimensions of our society. So we already started that process, and I want to expand it out to the Board of Educations across the island. Want to extend the conversation to our diversity committee, to the administrators. It's a very sobering experience to go through. When you hear about things that you think you're informed, and you think about the history of our country. It's such a great country, but there's a lot of things that have happened in the past that were really horrific, and we have to start that conversation and accelerate that conversation. And quite frankly, I'm going to look to the teachers group to support that effort. I've never received anything but support. When you talk about race, most people find it uncomfortable, quite frankly. That's been my experience to talk about it. And we have to have those conversations going forward. So we're not going to wait. And our BOCES has taken a leadership role on Long Island for this. As I said, we're going to roll it out, not only for our own staff, but we have all the superintendents from Western Suffolk BOCES participating. We're going to share the effort with the Suffolk Superintendents Association and have that begin to work on it. But my concern is not just working with the districts, it's working with our own staff. And we have a wonderful staff to do that. There's never a good time to do this. And people say, you got to do this in the middle of a pandemic. Yeah, why not? The time has come to do it. It's the time to have the conversation. Given what happened with George Floyd last spring and some of the other events, we have to talk about it. We're uniquely placed in our society as educators to shape and inform the minds of children who are going to take on the next generation of our society. We have an obligation and responsibility to have that conversation. So we worked on this whole summer. We had conversations with the superintendents. We got complete support from all the districts. And that's gonna be messaging that we're gonna amp up as we begin to get into the school year. And we look forward to being part of that. And we look forward to working with all the unions, not just the teachers, all the unions. This is a message for society. we look forward to that effort also. So,
I have one more final question as we round out this conversation. It's in regards to the New York State school dashboard regarding coronavirus. Currently, BOCES, my understanding, is not required to have the dashboard. But will we look to have something that, you know, parents, staff, that we can all see, you know, as other districts, you know, anyone can log on to any district and see what, you know, the rate of corona in their district.
so we actually, we just posted a letter either yesterday or today for our families. I'll double check with the person who's responsible for that. What we'd like to do is what I alluded to before, is when we have future confirmed cases, is to do a robocall to the staff and to the parents of all these students in Western Suffolk BOCES, and put information out. And what people want to know, in essence, is do you have a confirmed case? Is it a student? Is it a staff? And they want to know where it is. They want to know if it's in a school that their child attends, or if it's a staff member, is it in a school that I work in? That's basically what people want to know. And you're right, BOCES are exempt from the process. Only school districts have to do that. But needless to say, the letter that you'll see I wrote to the families was basically to update them on what's happened for the month of September. And then we'd like to update this on a weekly basis, put information on our smart and safe restart section of the website, and then get staff used to the notion of updating it on a weekly basis, and putting information in there so that if there is a confirmed case, instead of me writing a letter, we'll put it on the website and notify teachers and all the members of the unit that you can go on and look at that. And then eventually, this is something that it's going to continue through the whole school year, no question about it. And just get people into the habit. If you want to know where we are with respect to that process, go on the website, and whatever day we pick, every Friday afternoon or Monday morning, we post information about that so that we keep our families and we keep our staff members informed.
Thank you so much for answering that final question. Ernie, any final remarks? Well, he may be having technical difficulty. So we thank you for joining us today. We thank you for your time. Members, we appreciate all the questions, whether it's in the chat box, on our phone, on the YouTube channel, whatever it might be. Being informed is obviously a two-way street, and we just appreciate, collaborating and working as we move forward. Any other questions or final remarks before I stop the recording?
Jen, just thank you again for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to share information and answer questions. And I look forward to continuing this type of communication. I think it works well when we're all talking to one another. So thank you for the opportunity, and we'll sign off, and we'll meet again soon, I'm sure. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.